Namaskar to all of you. Good evening, good morning to those of you who are joining from other time zones. I'll just say greetings. I know many of you have come in thanks to this call that we did. This started maybe a week ago when Kirti Shah, who is the the trustee, founder, etc. of INHAF, reached out to me and said that we must see how we can get a few leadership minds from the city or from the country who can actually share their insights, their perspectives on what suddenly goes wrong with cities. Bangalore being one of them just now, because it hit the global headlines with the inundation threats that it faced, particularly to the east of the city. I come from Bangalore, just as many of the speakers here do. We have Mr. Thippeswamy, who is what can I say? He's a veteran of about 35 years from the Water Supply Board, who completely understands the three drainages that the city has got. If I take the ridge to be somewhere near the Secretariat in Bangalore, I will say, since there are many people here who are not from the city. Sandeep, he's been well, I can call him an activist if you like, but Sandeep Anirudhan is more than that. He's been a person who pursues many such things where you can get minds together, collectives, he calls it, in a certain sense, and where you can share sensibilities and concerns, not necessarily on sustainability, but on issues that concern you as an individual and the community that you belong to in many ways. We have Advocate Sanket Yenagi. He's a senior spokesperson from the KPCC, apart from being a counsel for the Supreme Court. Very precise when he speaks, and when he does law, his mind, as I was telling him last week in some context, works like a machine, very, very precise in things that he can seek or ask on any such matter. But his grandfather was an illustrious person. That's another thing I must mention. In fact, I had the privilege of knowing his grandfather many years ago. And there was, the town that he belongs to got to be called Yenagi because of his grandfather. So I think, he's more illustrious than Sanket is in many ways. And there we have Bhaskar, who is from the industry, from the building industry. And anytime anything like this happens, especially with floods and inundation, the first stone that you cast is the one on the builders, right? Apart from, of course, the government being another flogging horse. We have Professor Jafet here, who is a former Vice Chancellor. He's also been aligned in some ways to some of these secular concerns that the Congress sort of represents. But beyond parties, he's a person who has been a teacher of law for 30 years, apart from having been the first Vice Chancellor of the Bangalore City University. He's more as an observer here today. He doesn't want to speak too much. I have reserved Srikanth Narasimhan for the last because he's been a friend first for the last maybe 15 years now. He was the one who founded the Bangalore Apartments Federation first, which has now grown to about 1,000 people, 1,000 apartments, that is, which means even if I were to take, say, just 100 flats to one apartment, the numbers that the BAF today represents. Now, that ability to bring together people, Srikanth used in his next avatar as the founder and president of is that secretary, I think it is, of the Bengaluru NavaNirmana party. That's it. I don't want to say more on these people. There will be little chat box sort of profiles that will appear. The issues before all of us here as citizens, and I know that I'm very acutely conscious of the fact that there are many leaders among the participants here. I requested some of them to sort of flag off on the chat box if they want to speak and if they want to, sort of come into the panel and have audio access. There are very distinguished people there. We have the president, we have the CEO of the ELCITA, the Electronic City Association, for instance, and many others. I'm not taking names just now. Now, the issues are many. One, it's very easy for us to become reactive and say, well, what is who doing on the floods and what needs to be done on drainage? Now, I think that would be the most reactive thing to do. And as distinguished minds here, I would expect them to see if they can offer us at the end of this session, a set of very proactive solutions that the government can actually implement. And by 2030, can we have a scenario which can be a lot more manageable for this city? And to my mind, floods is only one minor kind of thing that we should take up. Apologies on using it as a minor thing. The really serious issue in the city is that we get less than half of our water supply from BWSSB. Mr. Thippeswamy is here, but let me state this. Officially, we get 150 crore liters every day. But after 40% of leakages, which he is the first one to admit, we get only 90 crore liters in a city which needs 200 crore liters. So we are getting less than half of our requirement from the grid. Do we need the grid at all? Therefore, if apartments, if everybody who is a bulk water user decides to take certain kinds of decisions which give you autonomy from the grid, which sort of liberates you from the grid of the water supply board, I think you will bring about a situation where the water supply board has to turn into a water management board, as many people have said in the past. Well, this is all I want to say at this point of time. Mr. Srinivas is not here, unfortunately. I mean, he had said yes, but he has not joined in. He is the member secretary of the Pollution Control Board. I've sent him a message. I'm hoping he will join us. The PCB has a lot of regulations in place, but water users are abusing it. Actually, compliance is more the exception. So can you blame the government for this is one question. Industry on its part, I mean, we have Bhaskar also, who will present his own insights. Interestingly, Bhaskar is an architect, and then he is a builder. Very interesting, rare combination of an architect turning builder eventually in life. So industry is talking about net zero water. There are many such projects in Bangalore where they're saying, we don't want the water supply board at all. We don't want them. Though we can get access and we can get a supply line from water supply board, we don't want it, they're saying. And then, of course, the national new water policy that the BJP has announced about 2 months ago, which is the third, I think, the national water policy after 1987. This is all I have. Let me turn first to Sandeep Anirudhan. We have, for the rest of you, we have told ourselves that we'll do about 3 minutes each. And therefore, you know the math, they will take 2 rounds of it and about 30, 40 minutes from here. And then we will invite you all. Many of you here as leaders, we request you to sort of, chip in on the chat box and say that you want to speak, and we will sort of give you the access. Over to you, Sandeep.
Before they start, I would like to just tell you.
Yes, Mr.
That the other participants, I don't know their background, but little. Let them speak, and I'll go at the end of the.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's how I planned it also. You'll speak last. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, sir. Sandeep. You have to unmute. Yeah.
Thank you for having me here, Hari. It's wonderful to join everyone, very distinguished folks. Without wasting time, I'll move into the subject because I have only 3 minutes. See, first of all, we are talking about this at a point. It's a kind of an inflection point when we have floods, and floods are getting worse year on year. Every year we've had floods. So now it's getting worse, and this was kind of predicted. In fact, I was on a TV program even in July this year when the Met Department gave a warning that we'll have severe rains in September, and I had actually issued a warning saying in September, Bengaluru would drown. Why did I say that? Because I understand certain realities in our city. One, we are close to 80 to 90% concretized. It is simple common sense that if the ground cover is concretized, water has only one direction to move, sideways. Therefore, every drop of water moves sideways, it creates a flash flood. Now, why didn't it happen earlier? Because a good part, our soil was more permeable, water would infiltrate. Then we had a lot of breaks in the form of wetlands, the floodplains, then the Rajakaluways in the buffer zone, lakes acted as reservoirs to hold the water. So, so in short, what has happened is in earlier times, we had water wisdom. Today, we lack that water wisdom. What have we done in the last 40, 50 years? We have reduced the green cover of Bengaluru from about 70% to what is a miserable 2% today. We've lost about 80 to 90% of our wetlands because the government has not notified our wetlands. Typically, all our layouts and all the new developments are in the middle of wetlands. People don't understand this concept. All marshes, floodplains, buffer zones of lakes, ponds, all of these are wetlands. These are actually protected areas under the law, but the state government is not acting on it. Hence, they are encouraging the encroachment and destruction. Now, water has only one way to flow, sideways. It will flood everything that has been built. If you ask me, about 50% of all the constructions are in the path of the floods. That is why flooding is happening. Why is all this happening? Because for the last 50, 60 years, we've not had leadership or vision. When I mean that, what I mean by that is a city ought to have a government. A city should have a government. It's not like a state government has 10, 15 different agencies trying to manage a city. That just creates a mess. Too many cooks spoil the broth. Ancient wisdom. That's exactly what's happened to Bengaluru. 74th Amendment was passed in 1992. 3 decades, we still don't have a city government. We still don't have a planning body called the Metropolitan Planning Committee. We entrust planning of the city to a real estate agency called the BDA, which is extremely wrong. It is one of the most corrupt agencies in the city, in the state. Now, what do? In the CDP and the RMP that they create, they miss out lakes, they miss out Rajakaluways, they miss out wetlands. What kind of a holistic plan is that? They're not capable of, we don't have capacity building. We don't have urban planners in our city planning process. Therefore, we don't have planning. Next level, the BBMP issues authorizes constructions. Number one, based on this faulty RMP, they don't refer to the revenue documents and maps, which actually tell you where such bodies exist. Therefore, they issue faulty approvals, which result in faulty construction. So today, you have a genuine case where BBMP is going and demolishing buildings, but they have authorizations to build it. So who's to blame? Obviously, the people, this entire process needs correction. Thirdly, we need ecological consciousness today, because we are attacked by the climate change problems. Our environment is completely degraded. We have rightly been classified at the bottom of the table in terms of livability index. These are realities. If we have to change, we have to accept these realities. We have to acknowledge what has gone wrong, and we have to figure out how we can correct this. Otherwise, we are doomed. Thank you.
Wonderful. I didn't expect you to be any less scathing. I'm sure Architect Bhaskar is listening to this. Let's see how he will respond eventually. I shall now turn to Advocate Sanket Yenagi. He has 2 roles, as I said. One, he brings a very fine scalpel as a lawyer. And the other he does is, as a Congress party member and a senior party member at that, at KPCC, he has another role. Sanket, we'll request you to see what you want to share as thoughts.
Thank you, Dr. Haran. It is a pleasure to be here to share some views within 3 minutes and to precise. Firstly, I would say, like the management of all amenities, drainage management is also one of the important aspects. We have regulations for everything. We have regulations for the waste management as well. But the drainage management, there has been no policy as such, which imposes regulations, restrictions, and strict compliance by the residents of the city. That is one of the important aspects, which we are still lacking. Water management, we may be having certain policies. Drainage management, we need to have the policies. Rainwater management, we need to have the policies. Utilization of the excess rainwater or the flood water, we should have the policies for the management. We need to have specialized scientific study-based department, which should study scientifically, should have a scientific approach in management. See, all the politicians may not be having an expertise. All bureaucrats also may not be having an expertise in the regulations or management or scientific approach. In my opinion, we need to handle it more scientifically. Then we need to give it the strength of the policy, and that scientific approach supported by the policy, supported by the citizens, and supported by the penal actions in case of non-compliance may, to a certain extent, solve this problem in a city like Bangalore. See, I would say there are certain departments like natural disaster management department. I think that may be having certain scientific approach, but a flood-like situation has to be dealt with separately by a separate department, because this is something severe. We have two issues importantly. One is rainwater. Second one is that rainwater is getting wasted. Thirdly, before it gets wasted, it is causing hindrance to the city's amenities and the city's residents. So all these things have to be regulated, balanced, and given some scientific approach to the authorities concerned, must be supported by the policy making. And so far, we have not given thought from any of the political perspective. I think more than being political, we need to have a practical approach. And thereby, I would say, it should have a scientific study-based technical adoption, and it should be supported by the policy. And after all, it's a matter which is acceptable to everyone, because it is solution-oriented, no politics here. No room for politics should be there. That's all is my point. Thank you.
As usual, I'm never surprised at your precision of expression. 4, 5 times you've used the word scientific. We have a Dr. Raval here who has been telling us for quite some months now that if the science of water is not recognized by governments and by industry, we will still be in the Stone Age. Stone Age is for him before 2010. The advancements in treatment of water, where used water has become the new oil, is something that India or India's officers or India's administrators are not willing to take up. But thank you so much for your views. We'll come back to you for another round. Srikanth, I will turn to you now. Look at him saying, you know, it can't be political, but it has to be a practical approach. And when I first spoke to you, instantly, you didn't even think of it. You said that it has to go across party lines. Over to you, Srikanth.
Thank you, Hari, first of all, for inviting me to this session, and thanks, Kirti Bhai. It's always a pleasure. It's amazing from my perspective. I was at the very first session that INHAF organized on sustainable living. The irony is that at that time, Bengaluru was facing a water shortage, and we thought we were going to run out of water at that time. And now, here I am 2 years down the line, addressing a session where we are talking of now too much of water being there, right? But then that's the nature of the beast. Obviously, both are man-made. So I'll quickly come to the flooding issue. In fact, I just heard Dr. Sanket. In fact, I was also quite intrigued by the usage of the word scientific. And for me, the science was defined a few hundred years back at the time of Nadaprabhu Kempegowda. The science is already there with us. We don't need to introduce any new science. The whole science, the whole approach was very clearly defined by Nadaprabhu Kempegowda. The problem today is not the lack of science, not the lack of a policy, it's just sheer execution failure. One aspect of it Sandeep has already brought about, which is the encroachments of the lakes, the wetlands, and all of that. Unfortunately, I don't even know now what can be done about it, because what is encroached is already encroached. In fact, we are now fighting to prevent the encroachment of a lake called Junasandra Lake, where it's gradually being converted into some kind of forest and subsequently into construction. So that's one part of the problem. But I think a bigger part of the problem, which is execution oriented, is that science that was created by Nadaprabhu Kempegowda has completely gone to the winds. And what is the science? It's a very simple science. We have roads, and roads have roadside drains into which the storm water has to flow in. And from there, they get connected to the Rajakalve network. And the Rajakalve network in turn get connected to the lakes. And when a lake overflows, the Rajakalve automatically gets it to the next downstream lake and so on. Of course, the holding capacity now has come down because of the encroachments. But even within the holding capacity of the lakes that we have we gotten our execution right? Absolutely not. And that execution has got nothing to do with policy. The execution has got nothing to do with, let's say, any central body having to be formed or constituted for that. At each ward level, if we maintain proper roadside drains, if the Rajakalves are maintained properly, and if they're properly interconnected between the lakes, the problem will not be solved, but can be mitigated to quite a significant extent. And a simple example, the epicenter of the problem that we saw in the recent flooding, the Bellandur area. 6 months back, I had visited that area. There was a 8.5 crore project that was undertaken to connect 4 different lakes. There's a Harlur Lake, a Kasavanahalli Lake, Kaikondrahalli Lake, and Saulkere. These 4 lakes were not interconnected earlier. So there was a grand 8.5 crore stormwater drain project that was undertaken to connect the lakes with the same logic that the roadside drains need to connect into the Rajakalways. And whenever one lake, if Harlur Lake overflows, it then automatically moves on to the Kasavanahalli Lake and so on. But a sheer and a mere inspection of the stormwater drain project tells us everything that is going wrong. The stormwater drain exists only on paper. On the ground, it's not even constructed for, let's say, 20-30% of the distance. It starts in the middle of nowhere, ends in the middle of nowhere. The roadside drains are not connected to those. It's a different issue that the roadside drains themselves are choked and non-existent in many places. They don't connect to this stormwater drain. This stormwater drain itself is halfway executed. The lakes are not interconnected, right? So even within the limited perspective of the holding capacity that's come down, the lakes today are not actually overflowing because the water itself is not entering the lakes, right? Through the system, it's not even finding that outlet into the lakes and then into the stormwater drain. So I think the science is there. The science was beautifully defined 300, 400, 500 years back. We have completely gone wrong. It's very easy to know that corruption and misgovernance is at the heart of it. The execution of proper stormwater drains, roadside drains, and interconnectivity with the lakes, my view is will solve at least 70-75% of the problem. And of course, the other problems in terms of illegal encroachments, not giving authorization to more and more illegal construction and all of that, like Sandeep brought that point up, is also going to play a role. But I think first, we have to set the basic science that has been defined, properly executed in place. That's my 3-minute presentation of what I see as a very fundamental problem.
If let's say the KPCC, as well as let us say AAP and BJP, agrees that they are willing to work across party lines, what would be your take?
Actually, it doesn't need working across party lines, Hari. I'm just saying in that particular ward, if that project had been constructed and executed properly, and if in each ward, let's say in one ward, it could be an AAP corporator, in one ward, it could be a Congress corporator, right?
Are you willing to say, therefore, it's more a failure of administration and not of politicians?
I think it is politicians' failure, right? But it's at the ward level. I'm saying at the ward level itself, none of this has been done properly. Okay. We have to execute it properly at the local level. And the only solution is to elect the right people. It doesn't matter whether an AAP or a BJP or a Congress or a BNP corporator gets elected. We need to get the right people elected who understand the basics of how projects need to be executed, who can do it with integrity and commitment and get that in place. That is all that is needed.
Got it.
Right? So there is no larger level collaboration that is needed. There is no larger level policy that is needed. There is no larger level body that needs to be constituted as well. If it can be done properly at the local level, as I said, roadside drains need to be in proper shape. They connect to the stormwater drains, they need to be in proper shape. The lakes, whatever remains of the lakes, we have to ensure that no further encroachment, but more importantly, the lakes should be interconnected to these stormwater drains. That is the science that we need to execute in each ward. If you're able to do it at each ward level properly, I don't think we need anything more, at least as far as the stormwater drain and the flooding issue is concerned.
Got that, Srikanth. Got that. I'm sure others will again have to say something or the other, including advocates. Sanket will come back on that one. Bhaskar has 3 roles. One, he doffs the hat of an architect. He is a builder today, runs a company called Habitat Ventures. Apart from which, he is also the president now of CREDAI. So he's got 3 roles. And the moment I spoke to him, you know what he said that day? He first time, I mean, among the lot that I spoke to, he used the word conurbation. And then he took the example of a few other agglomerations like the Mumbai one, NCR, and so on, and then had a few thoughts to share on what Bangalore ought to be doing. Bhaskar, you have heard these 3 gentlemen so far. What do you think? What's your take? You have to unmute, please. You have to unmute.
Yes, good evening all. And for the first time, I'm speaking something like this on such a platform. So excuse me for if there is any this thing. And basically, I am of the great opinion, internally, whatever we discussed today, Bangalore, whatever is what we are facing is lack of proper planning. And the planning is all short-sighted. When we're looking at a planning, the planning be for the planning. When we are talking, the thing has to be beyond 2000, not just 30 or 50, it should be beyond that. And today, whatever we are facing, even I was just telling you, for example, 2015 conservation area was roughly, even though local planning area was 1,294 square kilometers, but the conservation area was 804 square kilometers with a density of 110 people per hectare. Now the revised, though it did not happen, but in the revised, what I'm saying is highlighting rather is the lack of planning. In the revised area, local planning area was 1,206 square kilometers, short by 88 square kilometers. But the collaboration area was 884. So there was an increase of around 80 square kilometers with a density of 210 people per hectare. So like whatever we are seeing now today, Bangalore cannot be just planned for the consideration has to be beyond the Bangalore development area jurisdiction. It has to be a metropolitan area. And that we have been talking about, we are talking about now whatever we have seen. Of course, this was one of those rare cases where we had severe rain, which is not there. But I envisage this is going to be the future trend, case because of whatever global warming or, because of the range, we'll be seeing this quite often. So we need to be, prepared for this. And change is something which is constant. We also need to change. From CREDAI, we ourselves had requested elimination of, at least, multiple basements so that, you are not disturbing the groundwater and you are not taking those earth and filling up lakes. You can even come out with multiple podium slabs and from, even cluster STPs. We are seeing, our stormwater drains have been used like for storm underground drainage networks. And we also recommended for, just to have a controlled, not just to have a clear lakes. We said, let us have the STPs at the entry point of each lake so that let us treat it and leave it. And today we are actually, as far as water is concerned, we are getting around roughly 15 TMC of water from BWSB. This is what I've been.
Yeah, we know those figures.
So where is this untreated water? Like your reusage is what we are talking about.
No. My context is slightly different with you, AltTech Bhaskar.
Yeah.
You remember what Sandeep said right at the beginning. As Mr. Ramkumar is here, who is a former executive director of IOC. He's from Chennai, and he keeps telling me and many of us that if every builder, every apartment had, let us say, 2 or 3 open wells, and if you're a single family home, if you had 1 open well, and you used it as a bank, not simply as an adornment, you drew water from that as much as you could, and the rest of it you relied on external sources, whatever that be. What then happens is this entire drainage, and Mr. Thippeswamy will also, I'm sure, have his own view on that, gets to be managed much better. Why can't builders, therefore, ensure that such basic systems at a localized level of rainwater management are implemented? Why would that not be possible for industry to do?
No, majority of us actually are having rainwater network. Majority, all of them. I'm damn sure as far as CREDAI developers are concerned, because we are complying with the MOEA for environmental clearance certificate and all of that, and there it's a mandatory also. So all of us are doing that, and reusing of water also we are doing it to an extent. But the reusage of water, there is a restriction on discharging the treated water. So reusage also is a challenge. Whatever, best, we can use it.
Let me tell you, and I can prove this with figures here. We have the member secretary sitting here, Mr. Srinivasulu. You know him well too. He may not want to say this, but I can say this to you. The data clearly suggests to us, indicates to us that less than 5% of all apartments. Srikanth is the founder of the Bangalore Apartments Federation, although he is not. He's today presiding over the BNP. Under 5% have got rainwater harvest structures of apartments. Second one, under 5% of all apartments in Bangalore, and we have anywhere from 16 to 20,000, depending upon who's giving you the statistics. If you have some good statistics, we'll reach out to you, which actually use only 5% use STPs properly. A lot of them have set it up. Now, if let's say, therefore, to one of the things that I had mentioned in my first 3-4 minutes, if builders are able to say, hey, we will manage wastewater well, we will harvest water well, like our advocate Sanket was saying, I think things would get a lot better. Any views from you, Architect Bhaskar, before I move to others?
Yes, actually, on this, I mean, we at CREDAI are kind of tying up with a subject matter specialist on this. None of the developers are subject matter specialists. We are dependent on few of the consultants. Now we are coming out with a module where in which the civil component, the electromechanical component, we are bringing in expertise people, and where accountability is happening. Wonderful. And all the norms or compliances are done to the fullest, where in which we are having tertiary treatment plant or RO plants and things like that going forward. We are also discussing effectively. I mean, today's scenario, post whatever today, the entire approach is inclusive kind of an environment. So even we are in active discussion with BAF also, Mr. Vikram Rai to so many Harish and so many people we have been discussing.
Yes, sure.
And in the coming days, I mean, at least from the CREDAI developers, credible developers, you will have world-class treated water, and the government also will be surprised.
Lovely. Shall I then request Srinivas to speak before we get Mr. Thippeswamy to speak? Mr. Srinivas? If no, he's possibly, he must have put on mute and gone away. Asked to unmute. Srinivasulu, can you unmute please and speak? Are you there? Okay. Sir, Mr. Thippeswamy, like you said, you didn't want to speak until all the others spoke. And I know your views on many of these aspects. Please, over to you, sir. The next 3-4 minutes. You have to unmute. You have to unmute. You have to unmute, Mr. Thippeswamy. You have to. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I profusely thank you and say other panel members on this issue of Bangalore water, world water woes. So certainly, I think it's a very big subject by itself. I think I would like to bring in, highlight only macro level issues. I will not go into micro level issues, and especially the issues with reference to making a city sustainable water supply and for a long period, which is in fact UN has proposed in by 2030 all the cities should have, all the countries should have these 17 parameters. So in that context, I think perhaps Bangalore stands in a different place, basically because we are 3,000 feet above the sea level. That's one of the greatest constraints of getting fresh water from the perennial source. Apart from that, I think the rest of the things is that the city is growing so badly, and the population is increasing, and this is something actually we are already had 800 square kilometer. Now they have planned for another 400 plus square kilometers being added.
Yeah. If I may ask you, sir, you know what you told me 10 days ago.
Yeah.
Chairmen of DWSSB are not willing to be proactive for various reasons. And you have never, softened, you never worn kid gloves. You have always spoken your mind. What do you think they should be doing, sir, immediately in the next 1 year, let's say, in order to mitigate many of the challenges that these speakers have thrown, and which you also know anyway? Candid, frank, and outspoken, sir. Your views.
I'm going to speak frankly also. Fundamentally, see, there are so many issues and challenges. On the issue side, we have a lot of issues and at the same time some challenges. And now let us go by water sector. I think perhaps So there are many areas of water sector, surface water, groundwater, the prevailing situation of water supply in Bangalore, and what's going to happen in the days to come with this huge population growth and also the tremendous area that we are going to say 1,200 square kilometers. It's very difficult for Bangalore city because the fact I said there are no perennial sources and all that. Kaveri is exhausted and no more. See, basically they are simply doing see Kaveri fifth stage. I'm not sure how much of water you are going to get from fifth stage. So this is something very, because having done all these 5 stages till now, I know the situation very badly. But at the same time, we have to sustain. Well, in order to do that, see, there are many ways of these challenges to be. I mean, the BWSSP should address these problems in a war footing rather. So let me start with the first important issue is leakages in when you are asking a particular individual house, you should also first set your house order. That is the main issue. Today, even after 15 years, they have spent more than 900 crores, and they are unable to reduce reduce the unaccounted or non-revenue water, which is very precious. Not only in terms of water, but also in terms of getting your finances for that. I think, see, they have to put a lot of efforts and see that they bring down to the acceptable level. The countries, other countries like, say the neighboring countries like Singapore and Cambodia, I mean, Phnom Penh and many, Manila, they have done it within a shortest period of time of 10, 12 years, bringing less than 10%.
I got that.
I think that is something really requires to be done. I think seriously, I think they should see there are a number of issues, as I already said, issues and challenges are there, but they have to prioritize which is the one which is most important in order to see make this institution sustainable and also the people to get it. So at the same time, see, most of the cities in the world are reducing their consumption. In order to reduce their consumption individually on the household, they have to bring in a lot of innovative ideas of the plumbing fixtures. They have to seriously look at this because many cities have proved beyond doubt. See, today, look at London, Paris.
Well, we know the models elsewhere.
Reduce their consumption drastically. What it was 200 plus LPCD today, they brought down to less than 140. So that is the area which really requires to be attended. And that will also reduce your the sewage outflow and all that. You can give it to more area and all that. Those are the things. But I'm coming to the wastewater is one of the most important component. It is a black gold. It is universally today is looking, wastewater is one of the most important component and the one water issue. I think don't mix up this issue. Yeah. One water issues is most important. We have to look at all forms of water and make it sustainable. That should be our goal. In order to do that, see, mainly I am looking, there is a serious concern of the government of Karnataka or even the government of India should look at holistically, to manage this water. There should be one board, I think, controlling all the other departments. Today, Bangalore water supply is only looking after water supply and sewerage. But whatever we are discussing about the flooding of this precious water, I think that is something which which is monitored by the Bangalore Mahanagarapak, BBMP.
So, Mr. Thippeswamy,
yeah.
I will only ask you one question. You spent 35 years in the water supply board. You know the innards, how the inside of the mind works in the water supply board. Where do you think they're failing?
No, see, BWSSP today doesn't have a planning wing from last more than 2 decades. See, that importantly, most of even considering the other institutions like BBMP and all that, planning is most important, and if only that planning will only bring in the right things into the field. I think while doing that planning also, there is so much of efforts have to be put in. You cannot simply throw away the money and just make something with some consultant say this and they will implement that. That should not be the case. I think we should holistically, see, it should be, you should take the opinions of not only the citizens, but also from the expertise, and ultimately come to a decision what is really right.
Sure.
So that is something lacking. I think apart from that, the boards
Have you
are just
succeeded,
managed
sir?
by the only ex officio of the other institutions like BDA, BBFP, and see, government, etc. I think that will really won't help. I think we should have a body of at least 12 to 15 people of not only considering the local expertise in many fields. That is key. I have seen many parts of the world where whether it is in Australia, whether it is in England, they have that is going to play a very vital role. I think institutions.
Sir, if there is any one single person in Bangalore whose voice will be heard in the water supply board, it will be that of Shri M.N. Thippeswamy. Why is it not being heard?
I think it's a professional ethics. I don't understand. See, I am not trying to go. I can only advise people, but not. See, I will not go and beg any people. That's not my career. My career is like. See, I have come up and see. I have whatever I was supposed to do in my 35 years, and I'm planning. 12 years of my planning has brought in a lot of laurels to BWS.
Sir, when Architect Bhaskar, I agree with you.
Flying very high.
Absolutely. When Architect Bhaskar said that this is a rare time when we get floods of this kind, I remember 96, 97, when that entire Koramangala drainage was up to 5 feet, 6 feet of water, 80 feet road and all that. And when you brought in, I think USAID worked with you at that point of time, and that entire drainage up to Bengaluru, you cleaned up. So your understanding of that drainage is very, very powerful. Why are they not listening to you? People like Sandeep and others of the new generation have also, you heard our Srikanth Narasimhan, who is the founder of the BNP. They are all bringing a good understanding of the ground reality today. But you have known it from about 1990 or 1991. As you said, you had your dozen years of glory. If you don't mind, sir, I will turn back to these speakers who have now heard you.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Let us see what they have to say in turn briefly before we invite some of the other attendees to.
Sure.
And our PCB member secretary Srinivas says that the NGT SLC meeting is still not over, is still going on, but he will join us, he says. He's put us on hold here. Sandeep, very quick take before we invite other people here. You have to unmute, Sandeep. Yeah. You have to unmute.
Yeah, I've heard everyone. Very valid inputs from everybody. See, but fundamentally, I come back to the whole point of governance and planning. This is where we are failing. And to have proper governance and planning, we need to have a holistic understanding. That is also missing. Unfortunately, it is a leftover from colonialism, because colonialism was based on Western thinking, which is reductionist. The entire Western science is based on reductionism. So it disconnects itself from nature. That is one big loss because of our period of colonialism. But what are we doing to overcome it now? Because the entire world is see, all those mistakes the West made in India, they've corrected in their own countries.
No,
we are still stuck with colonial messages.
In a certain sense, without having to embarrass you, you played the David to the Goliaths of those big builders. You stopped them now, right? I'm not going to take the names of those builders or acquirers of property or whatever they are, all right? And it's unbecoming of us to take those names here in a forum like this. But you took it up as a campaign. You ran it for what, 40 days or so, and you did not fail. Right now, we can keep saying, we can keep throwing up all these wonderful intellectual things about colonialist and something else. But this activist route worked, and Srikanth, I know, and he will speak next, will also possibly say that, we need to keep doing this push. If people like Mr. Thippeswamy are not heard in the government today, what am I to say? Srikanth, over to you.
No, can I come back on that?
Please.
Yeah. See, the essential part of decolonizing is a path towards finding Swaraj. Gandhiji spoke about it in 1908. He said, I don't want the British to leave if they give us Swaraj. What did he mean? He meant empowering the grassroots. Do we have that after 70 years? No. Why did I succeed in my campaign? Because I got all the people in our area together. We held a protest with 5,000 people on the street to save that small lake. We did it thrice. Now, when people come together, when they take it as their responsibility, that is when we have success. Now, 74th Amendment has prescribed that for the entire country. It has said, along with Panchayati Raj, cities should have ward committees, area sabhas, and metropolitan planning committee, along with the city government. The city government should have all the services under it. You shouldn't have a BWSSB separately. This is exactly what Mr. Thippeswamy said. You shouldn't have a BESCOM separate. You shouldn't. So what do we have? We have a complete mess. We have so many cooks. City government should have all of this integrated. We should get rid of all the parastatals. We should have a central governing body. We should have a mayor who gives a vision, and the mayor who has authority to control the vision of the city and also implement governance in the city for 5 years. All our problems will disappear. Why is it not happening? Because the state government treats the city as a colony. We are facing colonization today. We should get to decolonize. We should give power to the grassroots, to the citizens, and to the mayor. This ought to happen. And we should have a water policy. We've been talking about a water policy forever. We have to have an integrated water policy for the city. I think a lot of organizations have been working in the city also towards it. What should it be? It should be based on localization. Why? Because any concept on sustainability talks about localization. Anything which is not localized is not sustainable. We should have water treatment in our buildings and in our apartments. We should have water collection in our buildings and in our apartments. We should have water supply also in our boards. I think a water board's purpose was wrongly prescribed to BWSSB to get water from 100 kilometers away. What they ought to have done is continue with the traditional water bodies we have here, protect them, revive them, and rejuvenate them. This is ancient science, as Srikanth said. We should have protected it. Instead, what did we do? We built Kaveri pipeline to Bangalore, and we got rid of all our lakes. The lakes of Bengaluru, 1,800 of them, had the capacity to hold more water than we require, but we have destroyed them. In fact, if we recycle water and reuse it in the city, we have one more Kaveri water supply. And if we even use 10 or 20% of our rainwater, we have one more Kaveri. We have 3 times water capacity in Bangalore right now, and we are crying that Kaveri itself is not able to supply. This holism is required, which our ancestors had. They built water capacity for the city 10 times, 20 times more than what they require. We are unable to save that. That is the shame that we have to hold ourselves to.
Brilliant. Srikanth. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, the very first presentation in INHAF that I made was exactly along these lines. If you can permit me, I will take one slide from that presentation that I made. I'm just going to put it up on the screen here.
Please do. Are you enabled? Are you able to share?
I guess so. Is my screen visible?
Yes. Go on. You can.
This screen that I had put forth at that time, right? I think I don't know which speaker was talking about it. It's now an accepted principle that an individual should be using roughly 135 liters in a day for every activity. And I was assuming a population of 12 million. Even if you were to take it as 14 million, the total requirement of water that we have is it's definitely less than 2000 million liters per day. It's, let's say, about 1600 to 1800, right? The rainwater that we receive in Bengaluru is actually 3000 million liters. As Sandeep rightly said, if we had that holding capacity in the lakes, and if we had proper groundwater recharge mechanisms without a flow off, and if we had proper stormwater drain networks, this entire 3000 million liters could be harvested properly, right? We have almost twice the requirement that we have provided by rainwater. We actually don't need Kaveri water. We actually don't even need STP treated water, but obviously we need to use the right kind of water for right purposes. But between the sewage treatment plant capacity that we can put forth and that we already have, with the rainwater availability that we have, I totally agree with Sandeep. We should not be having Kaveri water supply to the city at all. That water does not belong to us, right? But the beauty of the thought process in our politicians is, now we are talking of Megadhatu, we are talking of Linganamaki and bringing water from there, right? When we actually have more than enough water available in this
and
city.
not to forget what they wanted to get from Netravati, you know.
Yeah, I don't know where all they're
13,000
going to
crores.
go, and that's the tragedy of the
That was
thought process.
during the time of the Congress. I think it was with Mr. Moily. Anyway.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I'm a politician now. I should be scoring brownie points in politics, but I don't want to do that. I think all of them are equally responsible for the mess that's been created. So the solution is, of course, it's not a single pronged, or it's not one stakeholder who has to provide a solution. Citizens have to play their role, government has to play a role, the agencies have to play their role, etc. Everybody has to come together. But for that, at a very fundamental level, the thought process has to change. And I don't see that changing. Unfortunately, I have to bring politics into it. I've been fighting this battle for, you know, this same presentation. I've been using this for many years. The fact that Mr. Thippeswamy has been trying to present it, it's not heard. We, the citizens, have been fighting for this. It's not heard. And I realize beyond a point, it's got nothing to do with policy. It's got nothing to do with anything relating to a science also. It's all there. It's execution where we are failing. Policy, of course, we have failed. Now, dramatically failed on policy. So it gave me one big learning. We, the good citizens who have all these simple ideas and simple solutions. And again, the solution is not complicated. The system, we don't need to create a complex system. These are all simple solutions staring at us right in front of our eyes. Because of our greed, because of corruption, because of the lack of proper thought process, we have brought it upon ourselves. So that's when I said it's time for we, the citizens, to start getting in. As citizens, as bureaucrats, as civic agency officials, the politicians are not going to listen to us because the thought process is completely lacking. And that's where I said it's time for us to get into the system. That's why I created this party called Bengaluru NavaNirmana Party. Forget the large-scale policy changes. If you're able to get some good corporators in, even in a few wards, I firmly believe that we can make fundamental changes in the roadside drain network, stormwater drain network, prevent those lake encroachments, hopefully increase the holding capacity by expanding or rather preventing the further encroachment of lakes, and ensuring that we have at least a basic system in place which will prevent flooding, which will create more holding capacity, which can ensure that more water flows into the ground than flow off. With that, we can hopefully solve at least 50-60% of the problem. The rest of the problem is, as Sandeep rightly says, policy related. You know, we have to do larger scale, solutions. But at least we want to start off at the grassroots level, bring those changes. And there, in my mind, none of this is rocket science. None of this is complicated science. None of the solutions are complex.
Absolutely.
Simple things that we can actually, if we put our mind to it, engage citizens. In fact, one of the fundamental things, Sandeep talked about the 74th Amendment in 1992 that was introduced in the Constitution, which mandated the Metropolitan Planning Committee, which mandated ward committees, area sabhas. If we implement all of this, get citizens involved, and do all of this in a structured and systematic manner, I don't think solutions are far away, which is what we are committed to.
Sure. Let me only add this to you, Srikanth. You are saying at rainwater, you're showing, about 3 billion liters. Now, if I take this city to be 700 square kilometers, nothing more than that, and if I took, therefore, into 170,000 hectares of land, 10 million liters to every hectare of land, every square kilometer of land, into 700, I've got 700 billion liters. A whole year's need of water for Bangalore can easily be met. And if you think, if anyone here says, no, this is not possible, I can show you lands in the private sector, 200 acres, 100 acres, where they have decided to hell with you. I do not want any water supply board or any such water utility to come into my campus. And they are not even doing wastewater, Srikanth. They are just doing rainwater, treating it for turbidity with NTU counts and supplying it as water, right? Advocate Sanket, you've heard all these people, very strong words in some cases, and I know you are very restrained in your expressions, even if you're powerful on them. Politicians are not willing to listen, says Srikanth, right? And that is also perhaps, as he says, one of the reasons for him wanting to found a party, and his party has been growing on base and strength. What is your take as a senior KPCC member, not as an advocate? to what we should be doing for the city's saner water management and administration.
To a certain extent, I have to agree with Mr. Srikanth, irrespective of being a politician. But not all politicians have the scientific temper or scientific approach. Those who understand the science of water, those who understand the science of the problems the people are facing, the failure of science, or failure of execution or implementation of scientific methodology, or the phenomenon, how the water flows, and the science involved in it, would definitely have an ear to understand what is wrong with our system, where we have to fix the issues, and they will certainly rely on the science and the persons who are scientifically having some solutions for it. Especially the new age politicians, so whether it could be Mr. Srikanth or someone else, who have scientific approach of the temper and who really understand where we fail in scientifically fixing the solutions, not political fixing of the solutions I'm talking about, would certainly are the asset to the political system to give solutions to these issues. And I'm not saying all are falling into the same basket. There are categories as well.
Okay. In order that, we just don't meet this evening, have a, set of chats of this kind and go away without action, can I suggest to you, Advocate Sanket, that we put together a few experts, like Mr. Ramkumar, who's here. There is Dr. Raval, who will join us just now. Ankisha, please offer him audio rights, who talk about this precision and the science of water. And if your party or Srikanth's party, like you all say, this is not about any politics, and this is about getting the city to be shaping up on its resilience needs of water. Would you be willing to listen to them and see that you take some action further on from there, Sanket?
We are open for it, and we welcome it.
Ravalji, would you want to respond immediately to what Advocate Sanket has said? Because twice he has talked about the scientific process. You would be heartened to hear him, of course.
I have so many issues, sir.
Very briefly.
We have 3, 5, 8 to 10 political parties. Against that, more than 500 designs and engineering and technological institutions. Why don't we hold academicians? Why are we not heard? We should ask ourselves first. Number 2, we are talking about management of water and wastewater. Do we really know the science of wastewater? All the fundamental questions, even of health and economy, start there. 5,000 years of history of pandemics have their origin from urban wastewater. And third, the biggest flaw, as I see, stormwater drainage pipe. However big or effective it is, the contact between the soil and water should not be lost. Because the health of the climate has its secret in the soil. Soil can function only if it receives its required water. The pipeline or conduit disconnects this relationship between the soil and water. I have written so many mails to many of people sitting here, including Kirtibhai Shah and all that.
Yeah.
All learned. I'm not.
No, to ask you directly, if let's say tomorrow Mr. Srikanth Narasimhan or Advocate Sanket Yenagi chooses to speak to a panel of 2, 3 of you who are willing to give them some pragmatic options, are you willing to take that offer? Dr. Ravalji?
Yes, absolute.
Yeah.
Absolute. And I take responsibility for any unforeseen consequences.
Wonderful. Ram, for those of you who are latecomers, and I'll come back to Architect Bhaskar after. Ram, to you, my question is very simple. You heard 3, 4 speakers, including Advocate Sanket, on stormwater drains, right? And we know the status, right? You heard Mr. Thippeswamy also. What is your take? And very simply, very in terse terms, what do you think you can do to support people like that who want to do in Bangalore?
I think thanks a lot, Dr. Hari and eminent speakers. I hope my voice is clearly audible.
Yes, yes, please.
I think Mr. Srikanth has very clearly explained that less than 50% of the rainfall is good enough for Bangalore. Less than 50%. And Chennai is concerned only 1/3 is required as per my calculations. Rahul sir very clearly said soil needs water. The principle of stormwater drain, as all of us understand today, is take the water from one place to another place. That is, the dirt which I put it gets added and goes somewhere else untreated. My principle is simple. Rain harvesting stormwater drain. Within the stormwater drain, maybe below manholes, we have got blue metal harvesting pits. Taking the water inside. One is the pits filter the water, the graded depth, and the soil gets water. Very simple method. I have tried it in buildings and LPG plants across the country with great success, with awards also. I feel this can be a solution to urban flooding. The cost would be maybe every kilometer less than 2 lakhs maximum, or even less. And it can be a retrofit. Anywhere we can put it. If Harisa permits me, I can show the picture in the screen. I don't know whether you've got time.
No, it's okay. I mean, these are leaders at an enabling level. They are not technicians
in principle, rain harvesting stormwater drain.
Yeah.
I can share my paper of the Inner Oil building in the Nugambaka High Road, where we have reduced flooding and we have become water positive and we have stopped the tankers.
Yeah, in fact, Ram, I must also add, sorry to interrupt you, that INHAF and Kirtisha and others are also working on a Chennai climate action plan. And I think I have told you about that.
Yeah.
I will see how you will be introduced to that team. You guide them where you can. But in this specific context, in a city like Bangalore, which has 10,000 kilometers or 10,800 kilometers of roads, which means about 20,000 kilometers of storm drains. And if you say to every kilometer, you said what, 2 lakhs, is it? How much is money?
2 lakhs maximum.
Well, I think it will be a little more. My mental math says it could be more.
No,
but never mind. You know, the cost is not large.
My point, cost is very reasonable, and we can even take more at more intervals, reduce the cost.
I'm with you.
That's
However, you see, Ravalji sometimes is at opposite. He's on the other side of this kind of discussion we have seen in the past. So I would recommend that people like you join together, and I will do what I can to help and make that happen. Then we will go back and, possibly take up that offer that Advocate Sanket is making out. Any last notes from anybody else? We have a lot of time.
I would like to add one more point.
Yes, please.
You see, each plot should retain maximum water within the plot. Like my own complex of 8 flats in we should retain. If you don't retain, we are flooding the road. With simple measures.
Yeah.
Very simple measures.
Architect Bhaskar, in defense of the building sector, what would you want to say should be done by builders, then by occupants over the next 10 years if we want to make the city water neutral?
Yeah. See, as I said, I mean, we are 25% of the population, Bangalore city. Now, whatever water we are talking about compared to Karnataka. And urbanization is a reality and suburbanization is a truth. And going forward, we will be having issues. The issues are not going to come down. The problems are going to increase. We as a developer also have a role to play to make sure that, we are there and to, make sure the compliances are, upheld and are followed and respected.
Great.
And all the, whether it is groundwater recharge or rainwater recharge and reusage. I mean, we have been focusing quite largely on, reusage, important.
Yeah. Got it.
And also we have been requesting, like, why do we have to, puncture STPs at multiple locations? Why can't, like in the master plan, why can't we locate at the lowest levels of points and have the master STPs and things like that also? Because that also we are of the strong opinion, puncturing, or having multiple STP facilities also is not a good, this thing. So that, I mean, the reusage of water is also at the maximum level. And
Architect Bhaskar, my submission to you, I'm saying, I use the word carefully, is to go back to what Sandeep Anirudhan said. It's not about a specific task. It is this more complete understanding of the situation for the state, not today and for the next 20 years. That is where you should be coming from as the president of CREDAI.
No, 1 minute if you can. I totally agree. We need to have a proper, efficient planning with a scientific approach. That is most important. We need to focus more on planning than the estimates. The DPRs and the vision has to be very clear. It should not be long-term and medium-term. It has to be long-term. It cannot be just short-term and medium-term. And the overall scenario should be inclusive where all the stakeholders, and there has to be enough of listening also, enough of room given to the citizens also. And we, even the planners also, what is the involvement of architects and planners today in Bangalore city as far as the development is concerned? Is there any one forum where, forum where, it's been heard?
Correct. That's right.
May I add on here? May I add on?
Yeah, yes, Mr. Thippeswamy. After you, I'll go to Colonel Ravindra Singh. Yes.
Fundamentally, I think we have not discussed on climate change. Climate change is something which is seriously, because see, look at what happened on the rain patterns for Bangalore or the coastal area and other places. This is because of the climate change. I think the importance is not given by neither the state nor the central government on this issue in a bigger way. I think to every nook and corner and individuals this has to be spread, and the impact of the climate change, and we have to reduce. There are tremendous ways that we can do that, even see, including that see, water and wastewater, that itself will be about 78% of the total GHG emissions is from that. I think there is so much that can be done from that is one part. Second part is see, there are several reports of how best we can utilize this storm water as well as this wastewater. I think these are the two key resources. I think alternate resources which we need to emphasize, and we need to really look at and see, even there is no proper reuse policy and how it should be done.
Yes, there are many other, sorry, I got that, not to interrupt you, Mr. Thippeswamy, but there are three people. There's Braj Kishore Jha, there is Colonel Ravindra Singh of LCTA. I will invite Colonel Singh to speak first. Colonel Singh, are you there? Can you turn on the audio?
Yes, doctor. Yes, doctor. I'm on call.
Before you speak, let me introduce you to them, to all the attendees here. He is running a 4 square kilometer, 1,000 acre campus of the Electronic City in Bangalore. And he has now set about on a mission where he is making it water neutral. Colonel Singh, over to you, please.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Doctor. Yes, you all must have heard about electricity. It's been in the news of late for all the good reasons, I must say. We have stuck to the basics, right? We had somebody talking about the drains being cleared, the roads being maintained properly. Yes, we are doing all that. So we've not had an incident of any water flooding within Electronic City. That point having been said, we are also working on a very, very critical aspect, like it has been spoken by some gentlemen. I've not been able to follow names as I was driving. We are working on water neutrality, right? So all elements, what's been spoken about, how to optimize the utilization of treated water, how we can maximize the capture of rainwater, how we can actually give back to the earth by going in for deep bore wells and recharge pits, is all that we are working on, right? So though, like Doctor said, it's a very small area, we have been able to do a lot of this, and we have been able to bring down our wastages, that is NRW, to less than 2%, right? Which I think is a lot of this encouragement that it gives our team when we get to get applauses from experts like Mr. Shah, etc., who have actually seen through the entire program. Right. So what I'm trying to say here is, if we have small centers of excellence like this, and if we can replicate whatever else it has been done in other areas, maybe we start with townships and then spread it across. I think it will be a great achievement. We'll be able to spread across the good word across Bangalore and maybe Karnataka later. So what I'm trying to bring about in this forum is I would like you all to visit us, see what we have done, and give us ideas so that we can improve it further.
Sure. In any case, I'm visiting you the day after, no, the coming Tuesday, I think. Well,
Yes,
Singh,
Doctor.
one question to you before I turn to the other, to Braj Kishore. You said 2% is your NRW. Did I hear you right?
Absolutely right, Doctor.
And what do you think you can tell the city? What do you think you can offer them?
See, it's all about how you go about identifying where the problems are and how you address the problems. Somebody spoke about transparency. I think we are very, very open and transparent in the organization, and also about having an effective team to do the work. Somebody spoke about creating counselors who are actually dedicated towards ensuring this. It's being done. This is
I will come back to you.
Karan
Singh, I'm going to come back to you on this. Not today. I'm saying I'm going to come back to you in the next few days in a way that you can also be some kind of a resource person. You are 0.5% of the city. So you're not small. You are 4 square kilometers on 700 square kilometers. My math tells me you're 0.5%. Okay. So we will see how we can listen to you and take some of your things also. We'll get all these experts. Advocate Sanket, you, and after you, I will go to Sandeep. I think you wanted to say something when Mr. Thippeswamy was speaking.
So like I was saying, we have waste management system in Bangalore or the regulations in order, like dry waste or wet waste. There are certain regulations imposed and which are enforced, which also has the penalties for the non-compliance. Likewise, for the drain water or also for the sewerage, I think we need to have the regulations, and it must be made accountable for every resident or the local corporator or the local engineer, ward engineer, to maintain those areas and the sewerage system. In case that itself is not being managed or made accountable, then this is all happening because of that. And I would say accountability is equally important while we think about the execution and the scientific approach. Penal actions must be followed. I'm not saying that it is only the execution which would succeed. And in India, we are the people, because the other day I was talking in a seminar which was conducted by the insurance company about the vehicles which have been damaged in the flood. One clear idea which was discussed is that rainwater or the rain is an act of God. Flooding is not an act of God according to them. They say it is because of the negligence of the apartment. It is because of the negligence of the BBMP or the corporation, for which reason they don't want to own a responsibility.
Wonderful.
So I would say, who would be answering these questions? Insurance company will wash off its hands insofar as the vehicles which have been damaged due to the flood or due to the storm water or whatever the case may be here. But ultimately, the people should realize only when their applications seeking for the reimbursement of insurance compensation is denied, they would understand who has to be blamed, how the person is accountable. Till then, the people will not understand the accountability system in India. I would say that even the awareness must be created regarding accountability, policies must be made regarding accountability, and penal action should follow, is my opinion, which would also add to certain efficacy and effective implementation or execution of the system. That's it.
If I'm permitted to ask you this question, Advocate Sanket, you have the state elections coming up in less than 12 months. As a senior KPCC member, would you want to hazard some direction on whether these concerns of not just water, as Thippeswamy said, we are talking about climate action. Will this feature as part of your manifesto and your plank for the elections?
Yes, we are very seriously considering this issue. Because this is concerning the city of Bangalore. This is concerning every citizen and its lives. This is concerning to the every property situated in and around. So we have to see it is morally. So we must understand it is not just concern to us, but also to the environment.
Srikanth, is this, sorry, Sanket, you're saying more. Please.
So I would say, since it's a matter concern to everyone, everything which is around us, then we have to include this in the manifesto. And we are considering this issue very seriously. And probably we will come up with certain, say, assurances from our party in the coming manifesto.
Lovely. Srikanth, if we have to rethink this city, especially not just in terms of, I will say, water. What is top of the heap, top of the crisis, of course? Energy, waste management, and climate action, as our Mr. Thippeswamy said. What would be your manifesto plan as a political party?
See, as a party, Bengaluru NavaNirmana party is focused only on BBMP. That is the city.
Okay, not at the state election.
So
right.
technically, right now, BESCOM doesn't come under that, and I think Sandeep brought out a very valid point. There is no room. There's no room or there's no role for parastatals. Ultimately, everything has to get integrated under one single city government, which is BBMP. BBMP is a city government. Whether it's BESCOM, whether it's BWSSB, BMTC, BDA, everything should get integrated, and we should have a common system. But till that time, while we aspire for an ideal system, we are not there yet, and we are not going to be there in the foreseeable future either. So the manifestos that we have created right now focus on where we can potentially influence, and that includes a water manifesto. And Hari, we have been interacting with you also to take your inputs, and that's the way we build our manifestos. We don't build a random manifesto to just make people happy. We actually talk to experts in each of the manifestos. We have created a lakes manifesto, a trees manifesto, a manifesto for water, so on and so forth. The idea is to focus on at least the basic things that we can focus on, we can work on, we can influence. Things like energy, even the whole concept of traffic management, which is a multimodal thing, right? While we have a manifesto for that also, we can focus only on the ones that we can influence. We'll at least start with that. But absolutely, on our website, we already put out those manifestos. There's a lot of thought that has already gone behind it. And we welcome more and more suggestions and input from citizens. So it's all there on namabmp.org on our website. If you go to the manifesto section, we already have put out some of the manifestos there. And we solicit input from citizens with which we can make some changes as well.
Got that. Sandeep, if you don't mind, I'll request Braj Kishore to speak. After that, Braj Kishore Jha, you wanted to speak. Yes.
I have already written that we have our problem. The problem is we have our solutions, but our policy makers always look towards West for the West created by us.
Yes, sir.
We are not creating West. This is the colonial problem, and we are thinking to get the solutions from colonial people who are for ease of business, not ease of life. So create a pressure group. I am there. We have all the solutions. I am trying my own way to synergize with engineering colleges from wherever I have studied and wherever I can approach. I am trying in my own way. Please have your pressure group. Bangalore, I am connected with Bangalore. Mr. Sandeep also is one of them, and he is really exerting a lot. So let us give him all the boost. Absolutely. So please have pressure group and pressurize the policy makers to think in our way, not in colonial way. Thank you.
Fair enough. Thank you. Sandeep, after you, I'll request Architect Bhaskar to speak. Yeah.
So a couple of points I'd like to bring out. One is, Srikanth said that there are limitations on what the BBMP can do. But see, the BBMP, once elected, is a council of 250 councilmen. They are representatives of the citizens. So part of the decolonization agenda is to correct the faults in the system. And a council of so many councillors have every right to pass resolutions demanding that the state change its laws. So Srikanth, I just want to tell you, you can put whatever you want.
We've been having that. We will definitely do that.
Yeah, you have to put in your you put in a manifesto that will pass us, will demand that the government change the law to make it like this, and will influence the change. That's what we expect of you, because these councillors will be elected not to just sit around. They have to influence change. And second, Second, I want to say that the decolonization agenda, see, somebody put a question or a comment in the chat box saying that why are we blaming colonialism? Now, my question to you is, do you think that you are still decolonized? I don't think so. Whatever the white man did, we are continuing to do it. In fact, we have worsened it. So it is a mindset. It's not about whether the British are here or not. It's about, are we continuing in the same way? Are we making the same mistakes, or have we changed? So the third point, sustainability wise, when we are going to talk about, say, climate change action and sustainability issues, I think a lot of people don't understand why decentralization is better than centralization. See, a lot of our problems are because of centralization, because see, the UGD pipes, it's a monstrous mistake made centuries ago. It takes all our waste to big STPs, sewage treatment plants, which cannot handle the load, because anybody who understands sewage treatment understands that it is very sensitive to pressure, temperature, and it's because basically it works on microbes. Now, so if we decentralize it, it works better. And if we can actually bring it to a point of decentralization, like in the K100 project, what are they first doing? They're setting up local STPs throughout that stretch. They're ensuring that the sewage doesn't come into the drain at all, because handling it later is a big complication. When people say, let's set up a STP plant before every lake, no, you cannot handle it. That plant will only send sewage back into the lake.
Sandeep,
if we can bring it to a point where policy becomes zero discharge, I think we've had discussions on this. That is the best thing that can happen to a city, because then every building will only send out pure water. Then you don't need a UGD network at all. Then we can have streams of water everywhere, which are clean. Just like in Korea and all that, you can have fish on streams in every street. Now, this is the kind of vision we need. We need to understand that we cannot leave it all to the system to deal with. We have to deal with it at our end, not complicate the process by adding problems to the city. This understanding has to happen. Localization should be at the forefront of any climate change policy or even governance policy.
Brilliant. Over to you, Architect Bhaskar. Localization has to be at the center of any such policy to the future. Bhaskar, we can't hear you. You have to unmute. After that, I will request Mr. Thippeswamy to speak, because he's on the other side of the fence when it comes to decentralization. Over to you, Bhaskar. You have to unmute and speak. Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree with each of the panelists' opinion.
Okay.
Right from Sandeep's, decentralization, which we have been asking. I mean, the new BBMP Act to be implemented in the fullest spirit, at least. Everything cannot be centralized at the head office, be it, monitoring and implementation. Okay, for example, from my perspective, I'm just telling you, monitoring, everything from the head office is a big task. The implementation in the BBMP Act, it talks about ward level, and it talks about the authority being given to the zonal commissioners and things like that. So I totally agree with that, and I totally agree with Mr. Srikanth's, Mr. Sanket's opinion of scientific approach.
Okay.
That's the need of the hour today for Bangalore.
Got that.
I totally agree.
Sure. Mr. Thippeswamy, you heard all of these people, particularly Sandeep. He's talking about localization being central to climate action. Over to you, sir. Do you want to say something? Mr. Thippeswamy? Because I know your position is very different. And Mr. Bhaskar has taken a slightly, ambiguous position in the sense that he is, Sandeep, do you want to ask Architect Bhaskar, that is? See, when he says he is consenting or he's in agreement with you when it comes to localizing, is he also saying that builders should localize and make it happen within the water user locations?
No, I remember he expressed that he wants to meet some higher standards, and he said that as CREDAI, we want to be more sensitive. We want to be. So,
I agree. Yes.
Yeah. So, but at the same time, he also said we want bigger STPs, which are centralized.
That's why I'm asking you.
Sometimes I don't understand that in principle they are contradicting whatever they're saying. So, a better understanding has to come.
Do you want to ask him, Sandeep? You have a right to ask him. He's the head of CREDAI.
Bhaskar, if CREDAI can pass a policy of zero discharge, our buildings will not send out wastewater. It will not pollute the environment. It will not send out waste even. Why should solid waste go into the city? So as a zero discharge, you become responsible citizens or responsible developers.
Over to Architect Bhaskar.
I just tell you, I totally, agree. And as I said, in my earlier talk also, I said, we are going to approach a scientific approach. We are going to take a scientific approach. And what you are talking is, what I was talking to you is the outside of our complexes, where a lot of 110 villages were bought into BBMP. So in given time, it is very difficult for me to explain to you and take your opinion. But what I'm saying is that what we are like within our own complexes, we said net zero.
Yes.
We said each and every water should be used here, and whatever excess water is there, it should be tradable. And as per the new Jal Act, we should use that for construction of buildings. We should not use fresh waters. This is one thing what we are trying to, at least for rest of the country, we want to show this.
Wonderful.
Bangalore people. And just tell, I just said something, 1 second, Hari.
Yeah.
Now, outside of that, whatever larger STP I was talking about is for the community. Now there is a lot of untreated sewage which is being discharged to lakes. So what I was telling was, in places where there is a villages, 110 villages which are there, instead of you asking for, now even in the master plan, we are coming out with a vision document for the revised CDP and things like that. You come out with the low-lying areas upfront, you demarcate it. Is what I was telling, not for
I think you're actually talking of decentralized STPs, local level STPs.
Yeah,
like every community should have.
Yeah,
so I think we are talking of the same thing, but it was expressed differently.
I'm not a subject matter specialist, but what I'm saying is in the local areas where it is common, houses, individual independent houses. So we should come out with a larger, so that not only the city, even the environment is also safe.
Correct. In fact, Hari, at a policy level, what we should think about is to create marketplaces. Like every ward should be allowed to capture, treat wastewater and sell it to other wards. If this happens, I'm telling you,
Sandeep,
it will become a marketplace. Everybody will capture water, will use it.
It is right now happening in 3 or 4 apartments in the Sajapur road area. Vikas is doing it, right? Now, that is, he's doing up to 300 KLD, and treating it, selling it to other people who want fresh water, okay? Not for drinking, mindsets, therefore they're using it for industrial purpose and so on. Ravilji, you want to say something? Very quickly, please. We are 96 minutes, and therefore, yeah.
Regarding the science.
No, we'll take that up with them. Yeah.
No, I just want to tell you one thing. Aeration has no role in sewage treatment. Try to get it right, because 70% of the wastewater treatment energy is dedicated to aeration. Now, let's be economically viable. Secondly, medicine and all life science schools have adopted lot of engineering. Even in medicine today, 90% is engineering. MRI, scanner, all that. How many engineering schools have adopted biological sciences? And sewage is a biological science. Please bear in mind. Without biology, there is no sewage management. Thank you.
Got that. Advocate Sanket, any last words from you? Should we close? If you have something.
So I think we need to have a collaboration of all the stakeholders to take it further. And we also should involve the government and the government functionaries. We should have more workshops wherein they can also have some scientific approach, which have to be insistence from the point number 1. And I think this is something which we have to concentrate more on that as well, supported wherever support is needed for the policy changes. And they should also suggest how the policy could be framed. Even in framing of the policies, the involvement of the science is involved. Involvement of the science should also be made acceptable. And based on that, the approach should be accepted and adopted.
Got it. Clear. Neil Matthews, you want to add? You have raised your hand.
Hari, can I just
yes,
make one
Sandeep.
small point?
Yes,
See,
Sandeep.
there is a water policy draft which is gathering dust, I think, over the last 2 governments. a completely framed water policy,
enough,
taking
yeah.
into the ecological context, technologies, whatever. The point is, why don't the government take a step and pass it? Have a public consultation and pass it. It's very simple.
Yeah, it's a very simple question. Like you also said, solutions are available, but we don't know who we are speaking to. There is, it's very amorphous, as you all said. Well, Neil Matthews, you want to say something? It's 98.
Yeah. Basically, one thing I am continuously noticing is that we are talking about a large level problem solution, but when it comes to rainwater harvesting, like any other thing, it is so important that we do it at a very smaller levels. Like every plot should have rainwater harvesting. It is not enough to have a big pond or lake doing rainwater harvesting for a whole area. So this need to be kept in all the policy making, CREDAI or anybody. So even probably we can excuse 20 feet into 30 feet kind of plots, but 30 feet into 40 feet onwards, they must do rainwater harvesting. That is the only way to contain the water and also really regenerate the groundwater. That's from my side.
Absolutely. Let me tell you all that, this man, Neil Matthews, is outstanding. In the last 12 months, and I think he's running the 13th month,
16th month.
Okay, 16th month, he has not paid 1 rupee as water bill. He only manages with the rainwater that he harvests. Not 1 rupee. And this is not a small family, by the way. Right? It's a single family home. He's not in an apartment. Okay, he's able to shape his own destiny in that sense. What I think we heard today, Ram, I'll come back to you, is this, like they say, there is this irresistible force moving towards an immovable object. This immovable object is, and you know what I'm talking about, that sometimes is behavior, meaning what we didn't speak about is the impossible, obstinacy of the water user who doesn't want to make any change, right? We didn't speak about it today. And probably we'll take it up in part 2 of this when we talk governance beyond governments, and that means behavior too, significantly. Ram, after you, Sandeep. Yes, Ram.
Sir, I think the National Water Mission theme is catch the rain where it falls when it falls. And that says with is percolated down to all the state governments.
I agree. See,
so
they are good.
That's
right. As a slogan, it's very appealing. But where is action on the ground is the question.
But sir, they're implementing it with all the district magistrates very well. The amount of enthusiasm shown by the rural people is phenomenal. Because I was a panel speaker.
Ram, if you say that, it's the same government. I mean, I don't belong to any political party.
I know.
It's the same government which is ruling here.
But my only point is this.
And it's been ruling here for quite some time, right? And even the BBMP is in the hands of the BJP, right? So it's not like slogans can make something happen on the ground. But I have heard you, and I think others have heard your point. We'll take it from there. Sandeep, you want to say something quickly, right? No, you didn't want to say anything. I saw you. Great.
If you want me to make some final point, I can make.
Last 1 or 2, and we can close at that.
See, basically, we need to recognize that our system is broken. The process is broken. Governance needs to be rejuvenated. Without that, none of what we're talking will happen. And second thing, because unfortunately, we have an education system which was built for colonization, we have lost our local wisdom, native wisdom, and water wisdom. That has to be revived. For that, kids have to go play in the soil. They have to play with mud, with water, and in nature. Otherwise, we will never reconnect ourselves. I think these 2 things can fix it. We have to figure out how.
Brilliant. I think we should close unless Bhaskar wants to say something as the last word. I'm okay. If you don't want to, I'll respect that.
No, that's all.
Wonderful, wonderful. 102 minutes. It's been a fascinating conversation. And as I wrote to you this morning, we will put them into little specific short videos. Sandeep was very precise. So was Advocate Sanket now. And we'll send it back to you. But we will not stop.
Is not doing one of his summarizations, is it?
No, not today. This is today he's left.
We'll miss that.
Yeah.
No,
and
no.
yes, Kirtibhai, you want to speak? Yeah, of course. Of course. Go on.
That's what I look forward to in any of your programs.
Oh, wonderful.
No,
wonderful.
Hari Saab, Hari Saab is so dictatorial that first of all, he took away my conventional role of introducing these webinars.
Right.
I've done this for 78 webinar, and this is the only one I couldn't do it. So when I met him personally, I'm going to kind of hit him hard.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's one. Number two, there are two other points that I want to make. Of course, there are a large number of points I wanted to make, but one point I wanted to make, Hariharanji, for everyone, and that comes out from what is happening to this webinar series. We are about to produce our first book based exclusively on the webinars, a book on heritage and cities. We had 4 webinars. And what is interesting about 4 webinars is this, that the anchors, the webinars, took the trouble that the 20 panelists that were there, they asked each one to put together a 1,500-word essay besides what has been done. And we are producing a 200-page book. It will be ready sometime in 2 months' time. It's now in printing. Now, important point I'm wanting to make is this, that this is a suggestion to Hariharan Saab, that today's discussion was very, very, of course, very rich and had many dimensions. There's a second one which is taking place on the 20th, I understand. If necessary, we could probably do a third one. But is it possible that the next 3 or 4 months' time, we produce a small little or maybe big enough document on Bangalore's water and what do we do with it? Because it's in an issue like water, there is not a solution, but there are a number of things which have come out. And some of them are very brilliant new ideas. And if you could put it together, younger generation, people who are really looking at policy making, people who are really kind of looking at governance, people like Srikanth, who are making manifestos, have something to go by. So my suggestion, Hari Saab, is this: take a lift out of our webinar series earlier and examine possibility. And I think you're very prolific into the writing, and the panel that you have is very large now. And I think, by the time I think we finish this, probably would have 20 brilliant people who come on this webinar and spoken. So please do that. So that's my suggestion. And my last thing is, of course, I must thank all of you. I must thank Hariharan. As a matter of fact, and if you'd allowed me to introduce, he was supposed to be the biggest beneficiary, because I was to start by saying that this webinar is possible within a week of my calling him early in the morning. I was sitting and reading my newspaper, even though I'm in Ahmedabad. Last week, almost half a page of Gujarat Samachar was a photograph of what happened to Bangalore. And I said, my goodness. So I called Hari Saab. I said, can we do something? And what is interesting about Hari Saab is this, that not only he said, yes, there's something, but the evening, he had a plan for the first one. And by second evening, we had a plan for the second one. So this particular webinar, we owe to Hariharan's dynamism and proactivism and wisdom and ability. So I wanted to thank him. And of course, I wanted to thank everyone in this panel. Name I've written down because I thought in case my phone doesn't work, I don't miss out. And therefore, Sandeep Bhai, Sanket ji, Srikanth Saab, Thippeswamy, Bhaskar Saab, Srinivasulu, Ravinder Singh ji, Brij Kishore Jha, and of course many more people who spoke. I'm sorry I didn't really have all the names.
If from your own state, Ravalji is here, of course, you know Mani Bhai very well.
Thank you very, very much. And Bhaskar ji, thank you. Bhaskar ji, I think next time I come, I'm going to kind of meet you because there's something that I want CREDAI to do, which other CREDAIs are not listening, and let me come if you listen to me.
Nobody listens to you.
Listen to, I'm an architect and I also do lots of that. Thank you very much. It's wonderful, a very rich webinar. And we look forward to the second one. I will miss it because Hari has responded to it, that he does it on the day I'm abroad, I'm not here. So I'll miss that one, but thank you very much for this one.
And for some of the latecomers, I must recognize, yes. Thank you, Kirti Bhai. Thank you, Sandeep, reminding me to see that Kirti Bhai gets the mic. He and I go back way too long, so I sometimes take it for granted. You know, and he does not send messages in the morning. He will send at 4 a.m. He'll send at 1 a.m. You know, he doesn't know time and hours. I must acknowledge the presence of Professor Jafet, the former Vice Chancellor of the Bangalore City University. And he's been listening. I asked him if he wants to speak. He said, no, I don't want to speak. He spent 30 years in the National Law School as a teacher. And he continues to do some work at the National Law School. Even now he has a NLS mail ID. I will not request him to speak out of deference to his request to me that he doesn't want to be speaking today, but he is thinking. He wants to see what we can do on a climate-friendly Bangalore of the long-term future.
In fact, one of the first targets we can set is to notify wetland rules.
Absolutely.
That can stem this tide of complete encroachment that's happening.
Yes.
A very interesting action agenda can emerge out of this, Sandeep. I think what you're saying is very, very true. And Muni Rawal Sahab, sorry, I think I forgot to mention you. You told me that you written to me. I think if I didn't respond, it's not my nature. I must have missed it something. Sorry.
Perfectly all right.
Yes, to Sandeep, you want to say something. Response to Sandeep. Kirti Bhai, you want to say something?
No, that's fine.
No, that's okay. That's it, I think. We take your suggestion. We'll see how we can work on it. And I think we should close. It's 110 minutes now.
Just 10 seconds.
Yes.
Can we identify any area for constructed wetland rejuvenation in Bangalore as a pilot study? Thank you.
Sandeep, thank you.
Marissa, before, because I'm not going to be there for the next webinar, would you make a commitment on everyone's behalf and my behalf that you will do this book?
I will speak to them, Kirti Bhai, because if I make a commitment with you, I'll get 20 messages every day, and I know that. And you will be right about it. My only thing is, how many of them, how do we collate this and make it in the next, say, 60, 90 days? Each of them, see, these are not writers, these are action, they're doers.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't. But I think the ideas are. I'll just send you this book, which is getting ready on.
My suggestion to you, Kirti Bhai, would be this: that I write a mail to all of them, of course, with you on the CC mainly, and let us, sort of chat this out a little. And if they have the time, I will be the most privileged person to want to put it together.
I'm saying let's structure it. Let's put it on the agenda.
Wonderful.
And let us see that it gets going. Believe me, it will be a very useful thing to do. I'm being selfish because I think I run this webinar series, but I'm not. I'm not.
I got
that way.
Yeah. Sandeep, out of deference to our Ravalji, let me say this. In fact, in the morning today, he sent me a WhatsApp on wetlands, and I forgot to ask him to see if he could respond to you. And I told him that Sandeep will be the best person for this. Would you want to say something quickly in response? And you can work with him, of course. I mean,
in response to what? The constructed
wetlands? On wetlands, and is there an area where we can do a pilot?
No, there are. See, typically the lake buffer zones are the wetlands for a lake, which is why the wetland rules and the KTCDA rules, all of them prevent construction of any kind on 30 meters around every lake, because those are the natural wetlands. And then, of course, the buffer zones, nobody's talking about the stormwater drains, the Rajakalways. According to law, between 15 to 50 meters on either side of every Rajakalway is also a buffer zone, which is also supposed to be wetlands. Now, constructed wetlands, see, a lot of
I got
A lot
that.
of people now, even STPs are coming. There are eco STPs. So those are also constructed wetlands.
Sure.
So
What
I
I
don't
would
know,
say
like-
is that I will put the three of you together, Ram, you
Sure.
and Munir Ravalji, and then let's see where we can take this. And then we will go back to these people who are at the helm of, of steering directions, like Advocate Sanket.
in fact, the BBMP is now trying to consult with people to arrive at what an ideal DPR for a lake should be. Detailed project
So we'll
report.
leave it there, Sandeep.
We can actually include constructed wetlands as part of that.
Okay. We are only 7 minutes short of 2 hours now. I think we should close. It's been a great time. Every good thing has to end. Thank you so much once again to all of you. Thank you so much.